Hi everyone, Danny Bader here, and welcome to another episode of Back to Life, our podcast where I interview people from all walks of life to hear their stories and the insight and wisdom they've gained on this wonderful journey called life. So enjoy the episode and be sure to pay attention to what inspires you to create more happiness and fulfillment in your life, because that's what we're here for, right? Hi, and welcome to episode 23 of our Back to Life podcast. I am really excited for today's episode, as I am for many. We get wonderful guests on here. And our guest today is Vince Pappas. And you're going to listen to Vince talk about his story of growing up, getting his first couple jobs, leaving them, going to night school, having a full-time job, and having that moment of decision, right? We call it a mod here. And Vince had that moment of decision where he knew that he was going to begin his own company and start his own company with his two partners. The first year in that endeavor, they did $35,000. You'll hear over the story of Vince's career how he and his team grew that company to $100 million, $35,000 to $100 million. Now, Vince is a wonderful entrepreneur, wonderful family man, and you'll listen to him talk about a few things here: curiosity, mindset, vision, leading with your heart, and being of service to other people. And I think you'll find, like I did, that Vince's insight and his wisdom is not just applied to our business life. Absolutely, there's value there, but also applied to our life and how we build our family and our friends. Essentially just how we go on living and being alive. So take a listen here. We will jump into our episode with Vince Pappas. Hi, everybody, and thanks for jumping into our episode here of our Back to Life podcast. As you heard me talk about before the episode, our guest today I'm very excited about is a friend of mine for some time now, Vince Pappas, and you will hear his story, and I'm pretty sure you will pick up some pearls of wisdom through his story. And remember, it's always about asking two questions, right? Asking two questions. What are we up to in life? What are we creating for ourselves and our family, personally and professionally? And then the process, second question, is how are we going about doing that? And asking the question is pretty powerful, but answering is more powerful, because that's what's going to stir a little bit of emotion, sometimes some discomfort, and we all know that's what drives us to action. So Vince, thanks a lot. I appreciate you being here, hanging out and chatting for a little bit.
My pleasure.
We've certainly become good friends over the years, and I appreciate what you've done to support me and what I'm doing here. So the podcast, you've seen some, you've watched Back Crochies, and you know what we do. I think everybody has a story, and within that story there is some wisdom, some struggle, some fulfillment, and there's lessons in there that everybody, these folks watching and listening can hear. So why don't you take us back real quick, high school, college, real quick, and then let's kind of get into that story.
Okay, great. So I grew up in Philadelphia, West Oak Lane. There was 8 in our family, and we lived in a 3-bedroom, 1-bath row home.
8 kids?
8 kids. Never. There was 6 kids. 8
6
of us
kids,
with my parents.
3 bedrooms?
3 bedrooms.
So mom and dad are in one.
That's right.
And now you got 2 between 6.
That's right. And we never thought it was anything unusual,
Right.
I remember holidays, we'd have the folding tables lined up next to the dining table, and we had 20 people in there, and it felt normal.
Yeah.
So that was good. I enjoyed my time in Philly growing up. We got to play outside all the time. There's always someone in the street that wants to play ball or something, so it was good.
Yeah.
And then we moved to Lansdale when I was 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to Lansdale Catholic High School for 1 year, and then North Penn High School, because it was a brand new school, and I had never learned how to swim. And there was a swimming pool at North Penn High School, and there was a wood shop, and there was a metal shop. I didn't know how to do any of that stuff.
Right.
So I broke the tradition. The other 5 kids all went to Catholic school all 12 years.
Right.
But I, for high school, went to North Penn.
A little bit of a renegade.
A little bit of a renegade.
Early on.
Yeah.
Cool. Good.
So when you were in North Penn High School at the time, you needed to choose either the academic path or the vocational path.
Mm-hmm.
I hated school.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured I was going to be a vocational guy. I didn't know what, but it wasn't going to be a bookworm.
Right.
But somehow, and this is kind of the story of my life, always have a backup plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided, well, let me take the academic course curriculum, knowing I'll never go to college, and then I can be a vocational guy with academic education.
Right.
So I did that, and in my very first job out of high school, I quickly realized I need to go to school.
Yeah. What was your first job?
I worked as an upholsterer quite an experience.
Okay.
So at the time there was a store called Van Skyvers, and they were a big furniture store.
I remember it.
And we would put the sofas together, so the wood frames would come out, and then we would put the fabric, like you would see here, on the frames. And I was getting pretty good at putting the fabric on the frames, and it was pretty good money because we got paid piecework.
Okay.
But then at one point, the business got very slow. And here I was, this 20-year-old kid, and I was pulling a sofa off of the floor, and all these married guys with kids are staring at me like you're taking food off our table. And it was true, you know, it was. And I just like felt this is not the right environment. So I immediately started to go to night school.
Right.
And I also left the upholstery position, and I got a job with a company called Philadelphia Resins.
Okay.
And Philadelphia Resins had a division called Philly Strand. And what Philly Strand did was they made rope out of fiberglass.
Okay.
My very first day on the job, the very first thing we did was take the fiberglass off of the racks, and we put this yellow fiber up, which at the time was called Fiber B, and that later became Kevlar.
Oh, yeah.
So I was introduced to Kevlar before it even had a name.
And this is what year is this?
This is 1975.
Wow.
1975.
And you're 20.
And I'm 20 years old.
Yeah.
And when I walked in, somebody said, "Here, break this." And he hands me a piece of Kevlar.
Right.
I'm trying to break it, wrapped it around 2 screwdrivers, and I can't break it. And I immediately fell in love with this product, thinking, look at all the stuff you can do with something this strong and this light. And
so
that
your
really
mind always went to possibilities
and
vision, yeah.
So what we did at Philly Strand was we actually made rope out of Kevlar. And in the early days, there was more failures than successes.
Yeah, sure.
And we used to put a coating, a polyurethane coating on the fiber, and that would help it survive in some of these rope applications.
Right, right.
And I got a really good experience there. I worked in manufacturing. I was a manufacturing supervisor. I did quality control. I did engineering. I did sales. And then finally I was the general manager of the company.
Right.
So I worked from 75 to 83.
Right.
And during that time frame, I had all that different experience. And I became the general manager. And
so I was just coming in not knowing anything.
And going to night school. So I would learn something at night school, come in the next day, and actually put it into practice.
Business practice.
Business practice.
Yeah.
So mostly technical. My degree was in textile engineering, but I studied chemistry and all the sciences, and I really got a great education because it's rare to get the education at night and then come in the next day and say, oh, this is how you actually use it.
Yeah, get
right?
out of theory. Right?
Oh, I understand physics.
Yeah,
I understand coefficient of friction now. Oh, okay, yeah. I see. So to me, even though it was more difficult to work full time and go to school at night,
sure.
And sometimes
were you married then?
I was single.
This time. Yeah.
So I took 3 courses, sometimes 4 courses. So I was almost carrying a full load and working full time. But it was the best education. Yeah. I felt like I got the most out of my education. Here's a guy I didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And now I'm like reaping the benefits and saying, wow, this is tremendous.
Some insight in there, 2 things. Number one is you said when you first got that piece of Kevlar and you looked at that rope or something clicked. And, you and I have talked the moment of decision. We all have the moment of decision. Was that kind of where you're like, man, this is what I want to work with, work in. This is my business. This is.
I often see young people struggling. I want to go somewhere. I want to think about where I want to go. I want to plan my future. I had no idea. I walk in, someone hands me a piece of yellow string. I pull on it, and I fell in love. This is amazing.
Yeah. So I think that's cool because if you think too about your attitude, right, and your mindset and all, you've had a lot of curiosity, I imagine, over the years, right?
Yeah.
So for those young people. And when I had my buddy Joe and Pat on, them, Joe looked at the camera, he said, listen, you're going to quit your first job. So let's just go in understanding that. But how many times would people go in and say, oh my God, I got to work in a rope factory and go to school. This is the worst thing in the world. But when you saw that rope, you saw something different, which was really cool.
And it's still to this day, I enjoy the idea of trying to design a piece of plastic to replace a piece of steel. You know, because that's really what we did.
Right.
These Kevlar ropes and Kevlar products.
Right.
And later in my career, when we talk about fiber optics,
Yeah.
it was always the same thing. You're replacing a conventional steel material with a high performance synthetic fiber combo with resin, a composite.
Yeah.
So my whole career, really, since the upholstery days, was doing that.
Yeah.
Was doing that.
What about the you know, in terms of being an entrepreneur like you are, and we'll get into the rest of your story, the curiosity factor. You know, a lot of people want to start their own thing, and I think it's a lot easier in this day and age to start your own thing, right?
Right.
But what's the curiosity? What are the questions you always got to be asking as an entrepreneur?
I think it's what can you do, which is your passion, which is different than what other people are doing. Because you know, you can do the same thing as someone else if you do it better, if you do it cheaper, if you can do it more efficiently.
Yeah.
But doing something completely different and having that passion, that's the heart and soul, I think, of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah. And that's an innovation, right?
That's innovation.
You know, innovation is a change in the established way of doing something. So many people are trying to come up with this new thing. And you just simply said, how do I use a new material or create a new material that's going to replace a metal bracket? Brackets are going to be around forever. They will be, right? Now, how do we? Yeah, so it's cool.
I think one of the things that's really important is you got to experience failure before you find success.
Yeah.
And being in this world of Kevlar rope, before anybody even knew what it was, you had a lot of failures because you didn't realize, well, the tensile strength of this stuff, like I was mentioning, is great.
Yeah.
But the compression strength, you can cut it with a sharp knife.
Yeah.
Where a steel rope,
so pulling is strong, but
and that created so many opportunities for success, but almost every one of them had 10 failures before you got to a success.
Yeah.
And luckily for me, going through my days at Philly Strand and having that wide range of experience from every department and failing at every department as you're trying to make this product work was just. It was fuel for the fire for me. Right. Because I knew it could be done, but yet I was always disappointed with the failures. Right. And it forced you to innovate. Right. Okay, all right, that didn't work. What else can we try? Yeah. And one of the biggest tricks we had was how do you put an end on this rope? Right. So this rope is strong as heck. Right. But when you put they call them termination on it. Right. Terminations were usually compression terminations.
Like the rubber thing on the end of a rope or something. Yeah.
Something like that. And that would just cut right through it. Yeah. So it would fail every time. Wow. So just constantly working to try to come up with the best mousetrap.
So when you had failure early on in life, and even now, you know, as we continue to grow, what when somebody fails, what would you offer to them?
It's part of life. I mean, you can't have success without failure. I tell my kids, you know, you don't know who your right partner is until you're with bad partners. You know, you have to experience what's wrong before you know what's right. Right. And I don't think there's really any other way around it, unless you get lucky. Yeah. But, you know, you have to know what's wrong before you know what's right. Right. And that's true in life. It's true in life.
Oh, good. I like that. Yeah. So then you're running that place, GM in that place.
Yeah. So
and then what's the next chapter?
So the interesting story. You know, you talk about transformative moments. Yes. So I had worked my way up through the company, and the owner of the company, who I learned an awful lot from, particularly on how to treat people, they called him the old man. And everyone in this company loved this guy. So when I joined the company, I go, what's so special about this guy? Well, he used to share profits with all the employees. He was a good-hearted man, and people just loved him like he was their grandfather. Yeah. But they would follow him anyway. Yeah. He had loyalty in that company.
Yeah. What was his name? What was his first name?
David Collick. Dave Collick, yeah. David. Excellent guy.
One of the best leaders you've ever...
Best leader I've ever really studied under. Because he taught me the human side of what works in business. I saw it firsthand.
And what's that?
And that is...
The human side of what works in business.
You got to love people. I mean, it comes from your heart. You have to love your employees. You have to love your coworkers, your suppliers, your customers. And you've got to just be you and let that love come out. Wow. It sounds a little weird, but it works.
Sounds good to me, right?
It works.
It works for you. We're going to hear more about how it works. But if you think about other companies, right, Southwest Air, you know, Herb Kelleher, I remember he said a company is stronger that has love than fear.
I believe that.
Right, and look at Southwest, sir.
That.
Yeah, cool.
So,
so what happened? Yeah,
so
where do you go then?
This guy sold the company,
right?
And the new managers from the
But you didn't buy that company.
I did not buy that company.
Okay.
I was still working there.
Right.
And I got promoted to be general manager once they sold the company.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I was 26 years old and I was running a company.
Yeah.
And I found it to be an incredible challenge because I did not have the educational background. I was still studying, still going to night school.
Right.
Night school took a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like, I think I can do it, but I really wished I had, A, mentor, or B, the solid educational background to help me deal with some of these things. But when I first became the general manager, this gentleman, Dave Collett, he said, let's go out to dinner. I'm with somebody I want you to meet. So we go out to dinner, and it's me, Dave Collett, and this Dutch guy named Peter Stripe. And we're having a nice dinner. Peter goes off to use the restroom, and Dave Collett says to me, look, you're the general manager now. We got a problem. I promised this guy that I would sell him our technology for $25,000. The company that just bought us, ITW, doesn't want to do it. He said, you're the general manager, you got to tell him. And he excused himself and left.
Damn,
Here I am, I'm 26 years old.
A lesson, huh?
This guy's in his 60s. He's a polished guy, so he comes back, he goes, where'd Dave go? I said, well, I'm sorry, he had to leave. But I have to tell you something. So here I am telling the guy, I know he made you a promise,
right,
but we can't do it.
Right.
And he was furious, absolutely furious, because he had flown over.
Sure.
He was expecting to sign the deal.
He would probably strategize his business around this way.
Yeah. And it gets even deeper. But I later understood why he was so angry.
Oh.
So I felt bad because to me, if you give your word to somebody, you have to follow it up.
That's all part of leading with the heart.
It's
right?
Exactly right. Yeah. So I felt really bad for this Dutch guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, you know what? We can't sell you the technology, but maybe we could sell you the components of the rope. Mm-hmm. And then I'll help you put the rope together. Mm. So it's not stealing the technology, but so I tried to make peace with it. So they were real happy. So they flew me out to.
And is that how it played out then?
Well, it's interesting.
Yeah, keep going, man. We're rolling.
So I flew to Holland, and they took me out on a boat to this dike project. Mm-hmm. Apparently, in 1956, the Netherlands had a terrible flood.
Yeah,
killed 1,200 people. Mm. And they decided they were going to build a dike to protect that whole western side of the country.
Just hold the water back.
And it went on for 25 years. Mm-hmm. Well, they were in the last mile of this.
Right.
And the water was pretty rough in that last mile. It's the North Sea. And they said, look, the wire rope that we're using on these work boats is too heavy. Mm-hmm. So we need a synthetic, a lightweight. Mm-hmm. So that's why these guys were so interested to have the technology, because this Dutch firm wanted them to make the rope.
Right.
Well,
there's a bigger purpose there. I mean, you're trying to save lives. Right?
This is big. You know, for the Netherlands, dredging and all this is what they do.
Yeah.
So I'm out on the boat, and they had already tried synthetic ropes with another supplier, and these ropes were failing.
Really?
So they took me out and they showed me what was happening, and I saw immediately what was wrong, because I had spent all these years trying and testing and trying and testing. Mm-hmm. I could see exactly what the problem was. Mm-hmm. And here I am, 26 years old. I'm probably the world's expert on Kevlar ropes at 26 years old. And I said to them, well, here's the problem. Boom, 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 boom. Mm-hmm. So they took me back to my hotel, and that night there was a big banquet for supposedly the closing of this thing. And they invited all of the people from United Rope Works. That was the name of the company. Well, they came in the next day, and they go, well, you told us? They just spent like thousands of dollars with university professors to come up with the same answer. And they were so shocked that we knew it, that they want to give us an order to make the rest of the rope.
Oh, my gosh.
So I'm like walking on water for those guys. Oh, you know, they're like...
Literally, right?
So I go back, and I figure, you know, through Philly Strand, we'll work with them. Well, they immediately recruited me to leave Philly Strand and go to work for them.
Go work
in Holland.
Right.
And long story short, they doubled my salary. I couldn't say no. I was single.
Yeah.
I put all my belongings in a bag and I flew over
Holland.
to the Netherlands.
Man.
And I started a whole new life there.
Uh-huh.
And my job was to build a Kevlar factory from their factory. It was a $100 million company. They made wire rope, they made nets and things like that. So I got to go around to all the factories and say, I want that machine, I want that machine.
Wow.
And I put together this plan that we could build a factory with all this equipment that they already had.
Right.
And the budget was like $2 million. And I said, well, for $2 million, I think you can buy my old company. So this guy that I had met at dinner that night, he pushed the phone. He goes, make the call. I made the call. Long story short, 6 months later, I had the same job I had before, but I had a new owner.
Yeah.
And
wow.
They also had a division that did elevator rope. So I got involved with elevator rope, which was really cool.
Oh, yeah.
I got to ride on the top of elevators.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So through this then, you get out, you get your first job, then you get this, you work up to GM. Now there's this whole opportunity there. Fear show up for you at all? Uncertainty,
all the time.
Self-doubt?
I mean, I'm walking at the airport when I arrived, and actually I borrowed a friend of mine's big trunk, and I put everything I owned in this trunk. And I'm like, what the hell am I doing here?
You had that.
But it was the best decision of my life.
Yeah.
You know, not only from, moving up the ladder and being an executive, but learning what it was like to live outside of the United States.
Right.
Like the first time I saw a map of Europe, it was like Europe was in the middle of the map.
Yeah.
The United States was off to the side.
Yeah.
I grew up where the U.S. was always in the center of the map.
So it was your ability really to get, you were uncomfortable, right? Discomfort. You get comfortable with it.
Yeah.
So of course, executive, you're making more money, which is cool, but you're just yourself. You're learning. Wow. Here's what happens, and here's how I move through it. Here's how I can kind of deal with it.
The whole experience was that way.
I got it. Cool.
So
so what? Then what?
So I'm still going to night school, right? So I'm struggling here,
right?
And this job I had, I was helping the wire rope side. So the Marriott Marquis in New York. You ever see that big glass elevator?
Oh yeah.
So for a day and a half, I stood on top of that elevator because when an elevator comes down, if it's not flat with the floor, people are tripping left and right.
Yeah, sure.
And that's the last thing Marriott wants is people tripping off their elevator.
Yeah,
so I had to find out why this elevator wasn't working properly. So I was doing all these measurements, and finally we figured it out. And of course, you can't do anything in New York; you have to go through a union.
Oh, gotcha.
So they adjusted like I told them to, and boom, we solved the problem.
Right.
So it's 5 o'clock. I'm in Manhattan. I have a 7 o'clock course down at Philly Textile. It's physics and mechanics and heat. So I am driving down 95 as fast as I can. I pull in. I run to my class. Mr. Pappas, so nice of you to join us. I'm like 5 minutes late.
Yeah.
He said, sit down. We got a test. And I'm like, I didn't even look at the book.
You've been on top of the
elevator. I didn't even. Right, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to flunk this class.
Yeah. I
sit down, open up the book. An elevator traveling at this speed with a rope of this diameter.
No way.
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
I get done the test like in no time.
Yeah.
Pretty obviously. I hand it in, and the guy said, "Giving up, huh, Pappas?" No, I think I did all the work. He looks at it real quick. He goes, "Son of a bitch."
Yeah, right on.
So it kept me going there.
That's good. Yeah. So then from there, though, I know you from, your company at Fiberline. What was the birth of that company?
So it's right around this time. We had really built this Philly strand business, was starting to make money. And even though United Rope Works was a $100 million company, they made like $4 million in profit, which isn't great, but for that industry at that time, it wasn't bad. Well, our Philly strand division made $3 million of the $4 million. So I flew over to Rotterdam, and I was talking to this same guy I had the dinner with, and I said, look, we did so well, I would like to reward all the employees, as Dave Collick always did, with profit sharing. Right. And he said to me, well, you can get a bonus, but we can't give a bonus to your employees. And I was like, dumbfounded. Yeah. I get on a plane, and I'm sitting next to a guy from IBM. And he spends 8 hours telling me how great IBM is, how they reward employees for bringing ideas and saving money. And I'm like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Now, I had already been thinking about my own business,
Right.
but that was a Friday. Monday morning, I was at a lawyer's office, and I
Yeah.
said, I want to start a company.
Wow.
I have two names, Fiberline, number one. Number two was synthetic wire.
Mm-hmm.
And he called me back later that day and said, Fiberline will work.
It's open.
And he started the business.
Yeah.
Now, it was just on paper at that moment.
Right.
And I had an idea, and I wrote a business plan, and I had 7 people that I wanted to join me in the company.
Mm-hmm.
4 of them turned me down. So it was just me and the 2 partners that I ended up with that stuck it out.
Mm-hmm.
And we started the business part-time. We were buying like remnant lengths of Kevlar and splicing them together. And we would go into work at like 6 o'clock at night, and we'd work through the night. Well, eventually the business started to grow pretty well, actually. And I realized, you know what, we can do this full time. So I quit. I took a massive pay cut to do it.
Another moment of decision, right? We're going. Yeah. Let's go.
And I mentioned to you earlier, this is where my friends were like, what are you, nuts?
Yeah.
You're running a company. You're 27 years old. You're making more money than we've ever made. You had your own bathroom in your office, and your boss is, 8,000 miles away. What are you doing? You're crazy. But inside me, I knew what was right.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that treating people right was the key to success. And not giving my employees a profit sharing bonus when they made the majority of the money for this company was wrong.
Wow.
And it just hit me that this was wrong.
I like it. Yeah.
So I knew when I started my own company
your values, right?
that I was always going to pay a profit sharing to everybody.
Right.
The whole company.
Yeah.
So
So you start Fiberline in what year?
We started in 87, but I went full time in 90.
Full time in 90.
I remember I called my boss on Independence Day
Mm-hmm.
in 1990 to tell him that I was quitting.
Yeah.
And a couple of months later,
no non-competes or anything?
There was no non-competes, and I never really competed with Philly Strand.
Right.
A company I helped build. I didn't want to make money out of knocking that down.
Sure,
so
yeah.
For 20 years, we never touched any of their customers or
right.
anything. There was enough opportunity that I didn't need to do that. And I knew all the people I worked with there, and I liked them. They were my friends, so I wasn't going to hurt them.
So first 10 years of Fiberline, give us a quick Cliff Notes version of the first 10 years.
So
you started Fiberline, right?
Yeah, I started Fiberline.
So you got no revenue.
We got because we started part time.
Okay, so you had
so the first year we did like $35,000.
Okay.
And then we went to $45,000.
Right.
And then when we went full time, we actually drove it to $350,000.
Okay.
So it was enough to pay the 3 partners' salaries.
Yeah.
And we got a phone call one day from a supplier to General Electric jet engines.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it happened just recently where somebody had their head cut off because the blade goes out in these engines.
Mm-hmm.
So around these engine shells is what they call a containment ring.
Mm-hmm.
And it's made out of Kevlar because most people know Kevlar as a bulletproof vest.
Yeah.
So these things were 35 wraps of fabric. And if a blade would go out, it would contain it to within the fuselage or within the engine compartment. It wouldn't go in the fuselage.
Mm-hmm.
So they started to make these things. If you ever see a jet engine, it's kind of concave a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they wanted to make the fabric with the same shape. But they needed to put a coating on there so that it wouldn't absorb water because a wet Kevlar vest is not very effective.
I got it.
So they wanted to make this thing waterproof.
Mm-hmm.
So we get a call, and we really didn't have any business. My partner, the chemist, is sitting across the table from me, looking for a job to try to make ends meet till we get the business going.
Yeah, right.
And this guy tells me his tale of woe, and I go, I think we can help you. Hold on a minute. I'm looking at my buddy, pick up the phone. Hey, a chemist just freed up. I can do this work for you, developing this product, but it's $100 an hour.
Right.
He says, wait a minute. He put me on hold.
Yeah.
He picks up the phone 2 minutes. Go ahead. Start.
Wow.
So that started. So that business grew to $2 million a year.
Wow.
We retrofitted all the GE jet engines.
So that was
in
the big
fleet.
deal that got you rolling.
That really got us going.
Yeah.
And here I am again. I'm not trained. I'm sitting at the table with all these lawyers from General Electric. They all want to know the formula of the coating that we put on that worked.
Sure.
And I'm sitting there not giving it to them. I mean, I have nothing to fall back on. And we desperately need this business.
Yeah, right.
But I know if I give it to them, they're going to go out to bid and I'm going to be.
Yeah.
To this day, they still put coating 100 which was our first coating,
Yeah.
on their specs.
That's
And
it.
you pick up a General Electric jet engine, their containment ring is made with this fiber and this coating,
Yeah.
coating 100.
So the business principle is, lead with love a little bit, but also play close to the vest sometimes. Right.
I always tell people the first thing you need to do is you need to protect yourself, your family.
Right.
You need to earn money and make sure you secure those things. Once you secure those things, then you can think about others.
Right.
But if you don't secure your own,
take care
of yourself first and your family, you can't do the other things you want to do in life.
Yeah. So, it's such a message too for all leaders. And you and I have talked. I work a lot with the Marriott, Ritz-Carlton folks, wonderful folks, but they're running 40, 60, $80 million properties and busy and jamming. I keep saying, you got to take care of you a little bit and then everything's going to get better. But that's such a hard belief, to get sometimes. Yeah.
Life's a balance.
So you're rolling then.
So now we're rolling. I mean, we're hiring people. We're going 24 hours.
Yeah.
And then GE says, hey, we're pretty much caught up with the retrofit. We'll continue to buy for new engines, but we only need $600,000 next year, not $2 million. Yeah. So again, these things happen in life, I think, to everybody, but to me, I get a call from an engineer at Corning, and he says, hey, I hear you can put like waterproof coating on Kevlar, because he had heard about the General Electric. I go, yeah, we can do that. He goes, well, can you make it orange? And I would always say, yes, we can make it orange. Then I would take it to my team. Can we make this orange?
We make this orange. Yes.
Like, we can't make it orange. Yes, we can. We got to figure out a way to do it.
Oh, no.
So we would sell it and then figure out how to do it later.
Yeah.
So that was the introduction into fiber optic cable.
Okay.
So that was, 1993. So when I would go into these big cable plants, they would be making copper telephone cable. That was the majority of the plant. And then we go all the way to this back room, and they go, well, here, this is where we're making the fiber optic cable.
It's a small little market.
Yeah, and what I did was I said, you know what, I'm going to focus on this market because no one's taking care of them, and I think it's going to grow.
Yeah. So
I said, why are you using that product? And they go, well, because the copper guys use it. I said, wouldn't you rather have this product? Yeah. I said, we can make that. And then little by little, we started to get more products in the fiber optic cable industry. And it's the pin drop commercial for Sprint. This is back then.
Right.
This is the only thing on the internet, or the only thing on these cables was telephone calls.
Right.
They weren't thinking about the internet.
No data or anything.
No, they weren't thinking about it.
So you always had that curiosity of what can we do? How can we do it? What's next? How can we use this?
Well, the optical fiber, to me, was the same aha moment I had with Kevlar. When I saw what you can do with an optical fiber and how much data you can transmit through this tiny little hair-like, I was again enamored. Like, wow, that's going to be something.
Possibility, right?
I had no idea about the internet at the time, and self-driving cars and 5G. None of that stuff was in my thoughts at the time. But I realized that this fiber optic cable needed Kevlar. Because an optical fiber, if you put a lot of tension on it, will break. And if you break a fiber optic cable, then you lose your signal. Nobody gets phone calls. So it was very critical that those
dial-up sounds.
That happened a lot. In the early days.
So then Fiberline now is
now Fiberline. So we've got
15 million.
Yeah. So we rolled. So through the 90s. Every year we grew 30, 35, 40%. Wow. Very profitable.
Right.
By the year 2000.
You're always giving back to your employees.
That was never a question. So our philosophy was, and I can share it now, I'm not there anymore.
Yeah.
In the Bible, you read about tithing. So 10% of your earnings. So I would always tell my partners, look, we're blessed more than the average person, so we're going to give 15%. We're not going to give 10. We're going to give 15. So every year, 15% of our profits went back to all the employees. So back then, my thinking was, look, you're an executive, and you're making more than somebody else in the company.
Yeah.
So if you get 6 weeks' pay, you're getting more money, but you're getting 6 weeks' pay. So is the machine operator. Everybody got the same number of weeks.
Right.
But if you were higher up in the company, well, that check was a little bit bigger.
Sure.
But I never wanted to pay one person a big bonus and somebody else a smaller bonus. We were all a team. We all did it together. And I would communicate that almost regularly. You know, we had quarterly meetings all the time. We would post how we're doing.
Right.
But one thing I learned was that money really does motivate people.
Right.
And what you really do is you're aligning the business goals with the employees' goals.
Right.
So my employees' goals were they wanted to take their kids to Disney World. They needed a new car. They wanted to pay down their mortgage quicker. It's like everybody. So my business goals were that we wanted to make, Fiberline wanted to make more profit.
Yeah.
So if
every year
Fiberline made more profit and you went to Disney World, then we both hit our goals, right? So we aligned the goals of the employees with the goals of the company.
So people are driving the revenue, not the other way around, right?
That's exactly the way it works.
Yeah, so many people in business, they're so focused on those numbers. So easy to get focused on those numbers and then keep coming back to people, hey, we got to get these numbers up, we got to get these numbers up. And you're not loving and honoring and appreciating the people, right?
That's the only way you really are successful.
Wow.
Is if you, because, you know, the three of us were motivated, so we can only do so much.
Sure.
So we're through the 90s, and by the year 2001, we were $25 million.
Wow.
So 35,000 to 25 million.
That's beautiful.
Then some stinking MIT professor says, I think there's too much optical fiber in the ground. And everybody goes, yeah, you're right. The business died. The dot-com bubble, as the history books will tell you.
Yeah.
And we're like, uh-oh. Our business went from 25 million to 12 million.
Wow.
1 year to the next.
1 year, 50%?
50% loss of revenue.
What was going on for you and your people then?
Well, of course, I was building a brand new plant in Hickory, North Carolina, because that's where all the fiber optic people were located. And the Charlotte Observer, on the headline of their business section, says, company takes long view. And they interviewed me like, where do you see that nobody else is seeing it?
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, I started this project a year ago, and I can't get out of it. But, you know, of course, I spun the right answer.
Yeah, right.
But, you know, here I was building this plant that I didn't need and really almost out of money. And one of the key things in business is a relationship with a banker is very key to a business. It can't just be who's got the lowest interest rate. You really need a relationship.
Again, the relationship.
It's a one-on-one, treat the other person like you want to be treated. And we've always were that way with our bankers. So when this moment occurred, they easily could have pulled all the loans. Instead, they doubled up. And they said, we believe in you, and we're going to go ahead and continue to fund you. And that was a really important moment. But it came from the 8 years previous, when I always treated the bankers like they were my friends, when they needed me more than I needed them.
Strengthen that relationship.
But it's always, you treat the other person like you want to be treated. It's empathy. You have to have that empathy quotient. You have to have the ability to sit in someone else's shoes and feel what they feel. I remember one time selling wire rope. I went to a customer. He wouldn't even let me in the door. You know, he made me give me the sales pitch while the door opened. And I'm going, what a horrible way to treat somebody.
Yeah, right.
You know, so when a salesman would come to our place, we'd bring them in, we'd give them coffee, we'd make them feel,
sit down, sure.
You know, because they have a family too.
People first, right?
Yeah, it's all about people.
People first.
It's all about people.
So then you get through that.
So we got through that, and that was not easy, but we did. And then through 2002 to 2008, the business now is at 35 million. So we got past 25 million, we went to 35 million. And then, of course, 2008, 2009, another recession. And this time we went down to, we went from 35 back to 20. So it wasn't quite 50%, but it was close.
Right.
And again, I'm building an expansion on this plant in North Carolina.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I have this long vision that nobody knows.
That's all right.
It really wasn't a vision, but it was a good thing we did it.
Yeah. There's a little bit of trust there, right? I have a good team. We're innovative. There's always going to be innovations in every industry.
And I think the most important thing is the product or service that you provide. You got to believe in it. You really do. And I believed in Kevlar, and I believed in optical fiber.
Yeah.
I saw these were game changers, both of them.
For the world,
And even though there wasn't going to be a straight line up, and I kind of knew that, I didn't expect the big drops that we got. You know, I thought maybe we'd hit, you know, 1 year we didn't grow. I never thought we'd have to manage the business for these tremendous reductions in revenue and profit. And you learn a lot about yourself, and you still want to keep to your golden rule.
Mm-hmm.
You still need to treat people the way you want to be treated,
Right,
even if you have to lay someone off. You know, you think about, okay, say this, pretend this is you getting laid off.
Mm-hmm.
How do you want to be treated?
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to treat someone with compassion. This is why we'll hire you back. You have to understand why we have to do this.
Yeah.
You know, you do it. It's still not a nice message,
No.
but you do it the best you can.
Yeah.
And you have to have empathy. That's a very key component.
Mm-hmm.
So I promised God that if He get me out of the good Lord,
God, yes.
I said, if you get me out of this,
We talk about him or her on our show once in a while here.
If you can get me out of this,
right.
I think I'm going to move on and I'm going to sell it and do something else with my life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, by 2012, we're a $50 million company.
Mm-hmm.
So we hit the 25 drop down, hit the 35 drop down. Now we're 50 million.
And you started getting a lot of fibers and shoes and technology.
Oh yeah, we were expanding our markets. Although fiber optics were still driving the
fiber optics was it, but still always looking for other.
Always had different applications, some real interesting things. Anywhere where a high performance fiber can replace a conventional material
with really strong
strength and lightweight.
And where did it go? You know, so these people would know, where did you start?
Yes.
What client did you pick up that you really?
After General Electric, Corning was the next big thing. Then CommScope and all those fiber optic guys. But people like Nike who put these coated fibers in the shoes.
Yeah, all the flywheel, all the shoes, the fly stuff.
That
was interesting when I talked with you and your son Joey. When I'm like, my gosh, now you're making and I just call it string, right? Fiber, because I don't have the experience. But when I buy Nikes, it's in there, and I'm like, wow, this is.
When we first went out to Nike, Nike had a high performance fiber division, and there was 4 people in it. There's 36 people in it today.
Is it really?
And we're their partner. Fiberline is their partner.
And mostly in apparel.
It's mostly in shoes.
Some equipment, mostly shoes.
So the big item today is the self-lacing shoe.
Right.
So if you pull on it, it'll lock into its tension.
Right, for runners and triathletes and transition.
Basketball players. So right now, within Nike, they have these different columns of business.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody wants these self-lacing shoes.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So this is going to be probably the biggest business of all. Even when fiber optics was going as strong as it is and with 5G, I never thought anything would top that.
Wow.
But I think Nike and this apparel, sporting goods, the idea of lightweight, high strength, low stretch, making it work in those environments is really taken off.
So and then you sold the company now, and you're doing.
Yeah, so we decided to sell the company, and another good lesson here I'll share.
Yeah, please.
So we sold the business to a private equity company, and my partners and I decided to keep 30% of the business. And we still believed in it. We just didn't want to sign our names to all the loans anymore, and we thought, maybe more professional level managers.
Take some equity out.
We
worked hard, right?
We took some equity out.
Sure.
And I hired my replacement. And my replacement was an executive at a General Electric. And he knew what he was doing. He absolutely knew the business. But he had like a 2 on the empathy quotient.
Yeah. And
he was not good with the rest of the employees. And I didn't see this, and I didn't realize it's important.
Right.
But after a year and a half, the entire management team threatened to quit unless we got somebody else in there.
Changes. Wow.
So and again, it wasn't his fault. The guy was a smart business guy,
no
question about it to this day.
Yeah.
But it just didn't fit. The cultural fit. GE raised him differently than Vince Pappas raised his guys.
Yeah.
So I went back to work. I had to replace him, and I went back and I took the helm again. Which was another excellent experience because I got to retire and then go back.
Yes.
And then realized I think I want to retire again.
Yeah.
So this time I chose my replacement of somebody I knew. I knew he had a heart. I knew he was strong.
He's a good man, yeah.
And it took a year, so I had to run the company for a year, kind of without my hand on the throttle because I didn't want to do anything, knowing that this gentleman that was replacing me was a very capable guy, and I didn't want to mess things up.
Right.
So I ran it for a year. He came back, and after a month, I realized I'd been replaced. This guy is really going to do it.
Right.
So he took over. I backed off. I remained the chairman of the board. And then January a year ago, the private equity company sold the business to Poly Law.
Got it.
And at the time we sold it, it was a $100 million business.
Wow.
And it's continuing to grow.
Yeah.
Very profitable. Basically doing the same markets, most of the same customers.
Yeah.
And maintaining that philosophy
Mm-hmm.
of treating other people the way you want to be treated.
Right.
And that's the mainstay. We were at a funeral for a 50-year-old employee last month,
Mm-hmm.
and 65 Fiberline people showed up. People who had retired, people who had quit and went other places.
Really?
And you know, you normally at a viewing, you go through the line and you go out the door.
Yeah.
Everybody stayed in the back,
Mm-hmm.
commiserating, remembering. And the new CEO came up to me and goes, "You build a family, not a business. You build a family."
Wow.
And I felt that. It was a sad moment to be at a viewing,
Sure.
but it was a really encouraging moment to see the love from all the people in that
Build a
organization.
family,
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Wonderful journey. So if we had to take that now and distill it into 3 lessons for somebody getting out of college, for somebody in a job that they want to leave, they want to transition out, for somebody in a job that's saying, you know what, I'm going to go do this on my own, I want to do something else. And what are like 3 things they really have to hold on to and kind of work through? And what are 3 things?
Okay.
4
Well,
things?
you know, so since I've been retired, I like to consult with businesses because I had a lot of experiences
Sure.
up and down, sold the company twice.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't get paid for it. I don't want to be paid for
Sure.
it. I've made my money.
I
I just want to give back.
Yeah,
you know, in any way I can.
That's why I love you, brother. One of the reasons.
So what I usually tell people is it's really important to understand your personal goals.
Right.
What do you want out of life?
Right.
So the way I sort of go about trying to share this is, you know, take a picture of where you are today.
Right.
And you can take a pretty crystal clear picture.
Yes, you can.
How much are you earning? How many hours are you sleeping?
Yep.
What are you
Health,
eating?
relationships.
But, you know, you can fill a book with what's
Mm-hmm.
happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
But then take a picture of where you want to be 5 years from now, 3 years from now, pick a time.
Sure.
And then try to draw that picture.
Mm-hmm.
Now you know where you want to be,
Mm-hmm.
and you know where you are.
That's your vision, right?
How are you going to get there?
Right.
That's your strategic
What
plan.
needs to be real, yeah.
How are you going to get there? Is it realistic? And if it is, what do you got to do year 1? What do you have to do year 2?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I've talked to young people, and they say, yeah, I'd like to make $250,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
I said, what are you earning now? 75. I go, well, just to be honest with you, if you stay in your job and you do really well and you get 5% raise a year,
Mm-hmm.
you'll maybe be at 120, but you're not going to be at 250.
Right.
So for you to get to 250, you need a different path than the one you're on.
Right.
And then that gets people thinking about, you know, where you want to be,
Mm-hmm.
how you're going to get there.
So get clear. First lesson, get clear on your vision,
Get
right?
clear
See
on
the
your
other
vision.
side, where you headed.
Right. Look at people who you admire. I'd like to be like this person.
Oh,
I
yeah.
want to be like that person.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to be where that person is.
Yeah.
So that's kind of your goal. Now you've got something,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can build that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happens is, like this one gentleman wants to make $250,000.
Right.
You need a different skill set.
Yeah.
You're not going to make it selling copy machines.
Yeah,
You're going to have to do something else.
Right.
And then for this gentleman, we talked about real estate. He had a love of real estate. That was his passion. We talked about, you know, you could do this on the side, come back from work, start selling.
Mm-hmm.
And once it gets big enough, you know, you could make $250,000
Mm-hmm.
in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you need your real estate license. You got to study for it. You got to start part-time.
Right.
So that helps them create a plan.
Mm-hmm.
So
I like that. Just interrupt for a minute, but I like that there's so many people that don't like where they are, and they want to go, and they think they have to stop and start. Whereas you're saying, keep going, man. Keep that financial. You know, you're making some money. You don't have that pressure, but then invest over here and start building something.
Right.
And that's definitely a common theme for you. And I see so many people. I can't go do that because I can't stop this, but they don't see the possibility of do
What
this
else
and
can
just
you do?
start a little bit over here.
maybe you go to night school. Maybe you want to be a chef. Get a job in a restaurant in the evening.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
But if you're like, well, I'm just doing this to make ends meet. That's one thing.
Yeah.
But I'm doing this because I want to be here,
Mm-hmm.
and this is a path to here.
Yeah, I love it.
That's a different way
Yeah.
of having to
Yeah.
do those things.
How about the resilience in, great, here's where I want to go, here's all the actions I need to take. Oh shit, I'm procrastinating like crazy because I'm so scared and it's risky and I'm uncertain. And there's maybe people in my world that are telling me I can't do it.
Well,
You've heard a few of those, yes?
yeah. I mean,
So what do you offer to them? We all hear that.
well, you know, something Pat Croce and you talked about on a podcast you recently did. Take some time, quiet, think inside yourself, find what really makes you tick. And then if you really find that place, that calming place, it builds confidence. And that's the difference between failure and success, is confidence.
Internal confidence.
Internal confidence. And realizing that there's probably a greater purpose why you're on this earth.
Yes.
And you don't really know what it is, but believe in it and follow the path.
Yeah.
Let the doors be open.
And if you believe in that, then these worldly actions that we're so damn scared of are just worldly actions.
Yeah, exactly
and some will work and some will fail, but we're still, So how important is your faith?
Very important.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I built the business on that, on the golden rule. You know, I'm a big thinking kind of person, and I don't like the details.
Right.
So I was smart and surrounded myself with detailed people.
Yeah.
So you can read the Bible, which I know many people do and can share with me.
Sure.
Or you take the golden rule, and to me, that's the cliff notes of the Bible.
Yeah.
If you treat other people the way you want to be treated, it's probably the story in every verse and every page of the Bible.
With love, right?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And it was easy for me to do that. You know, I don't have to fake it. I don't have to force it.
Yeah.
I feel for people because the good news is I used to be the machine operator.
Yeah.
I knew what that felt like.
Yeah.
You know, I used to be the salesman on the road, away from my family. So I knew what that felt like. So I could be empathetic as I got into more executive roles. And I never wanted to change that.
Right.
You know.
So regardless of what job you're doing or whatever, just do it with love, right? Do it with a care for other people.
It's
even when they're knuckleheads. What about when they're a knucklehead? You know.
Then I that's where my empathy quotient even goes higher because I feel for them.
Yeah.
I wonder if this person knows how they're coming off. I wonder if this person really knows what other people think of them. And I feel for them. You know,
so then you crank it up even a little bit more.
You crank it even more.
Versus getting into combative.
Even your enemies, you know, who someone who hates you, you've got to love them.
Yeah.
Because hating back only hurts you.
Yeah.
You've got to love.
Yeah.
And that's the secret of being successful in life. Is love. Giving and giving love.
That's
and feeling
it. That is it. Well, I feel like that's a good point to end, man. Yeah. So we boil it down, right? Everybody, you heard Vince. I mean, he worked hard. He came from middle class family, right?
Lower class.
Yeah, lower class. Yeah. And the moments of decision he had were, wow, I really like this industry of rope and Kevlar and materials, and it really ignites my passion. So what Vince is saying is, number one, find that, right? Create that. Go out and get it. Surround yourself with the right people.
Key.
Right? Really key to surround yourself with the right people. Monitor your thoughts. Realize that there's something bigger going on here. And yes, we have to make money. We have to do our job and those kinds of things. But then ultimately leave from that source of something bigger, which we call it love. You know?
So for the longest time, I felt that selling the company for the second time, hitting the goals, exceeding every goal I ever set for myself, was the end.
Yeah.
But honestly, it was just the means to whatever the end is for me now.
Yeah.
So moving forward, you know, now what do personally I want to do with my life? And a professor at Cheney University, when I was looking at their aquaponic farm, he said to me, all right, you're retired now. What do you want to do? And immediately out of my mouth, I don't even know why, I said, I'm going to do good things. And I don't know what good things are. I just want to leave the door open. And when I see somewhere where I can help or I can give, that's what I want to do.
Good.
And I have to say,
and you will.
And
you are.
And I have to say that in growing the business, the people that you surround yourself with are critical. And you have to have like-minded people. And I was lucky. I had two partners that were just, you know, today we're three best friends.
Yeah. And
we never had a fight. We always agreed on everything, and that's rare. But if you surround yourself with like people, success will come your way.
Yeah, I love it. So some good insight and some good wisdom here. I'll wrap up here in a little bit, but right now let's just say goodbye to Vince. I appreciate it so much. So thank you, brother.
Thanks, buddy.
From here, I'm a hugger. All right, thanks, everybody. I'll wrap up, and you'll hear my thoughts, and we'll check you on the next episode of Back to Life.
Wow, what a great conversation with Vince. See, I told you before the podcast that you were going to enjoy it. A couple things that really struck me in our conversation was when Vince talked about the importance of having that backup plan. think to yourself there, do you have the backup plan? The other thing that was really important was the passion that you have to have for what you do. He talked about that young man getting into real estate. He talked about the first time that he touched Kevlar, and he tried to break it, you remember, with those 2 screwdrivers. And what was interesting then, he said, man, I just thought of all the possibilities for this. So again, a good lesson in life and business is, what are the possibilities for where we're headed? I liked a lot when he talked about the journey through 2008, right? That recession that we had here and how it impacted his business, and how he made a promise with God. I thought that was pretty good, that if God supported him and got him through it, he would sell the company and move on to something else. I really liked when he talked about that older gentleman in one of the companies, David, and he said it was the best leader I ever had, simply because, and he quoted, he said, he taught him the human side of business. And you remember I said, what is the human side of business? And Vince simply said, you got to love people. And I thought, well, there's another insight that goes for business and for life. Really interesting how Vince talked about connecting the business goals to the people's goals, and them wanting to take their family to Disneyland. So if the business does better, Disney World, then they do better. And I really liked his leadership principle of giving 15% of the profits back to the people. And it really showed true after he talked about that funeral for a younger guy that passed away that had worked there a long time at Fiberline. And somebody said to him afterwards, you really didn't just build a company, you built a family. I mean, I think that's pretty cool. So great to hear his journey and kind of the reinvention of the business with the Kevlar rope, and then getting into fiber optic cables, and now working a lot with, or having worked with Nike on the self-lacing shoes. So I encourage you all to just kind of have that vision and have that curiosity for your business life and for your personal life, in terms of what can you create, how can you continue to, I don't want to say reinvent yourself, because we're always inventing ourselves. It's just part of the journey. You don't have to reinvent yourself. You just have to practice the jackrabbit principle to evolve, which is to undergo continuous change and gradual growth. And Vince certainly did that. And I think the question that showed up for me the most, and probably for you, was towards the end of our discussion, where he talked about it. It's really important just to determine and uncover what your purpose is and why you're here on this earth. And I thought that was pretty cool. So my sense is that you got an awful lot of insight and wisdom from Vince that you will apply in your life as you head out of here. Because every day your feet hit the ground, your eyes open, and you are back to life. So make sure that you are focused on creating a lot of happiness and a lot of fulfillment for you and for your family and your friends and your people, because that's why we're here. So until the next episode, be well.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Back to Life. Our conversation sure got me thinking about some things that I need to pay attention to in my life, and I trust the same occurred for you as well. So until next time, each day when you come back to life, be sure to always be inspired.